Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, exchanging barbs yesterday about prayer after Senator Mitt Romney talked about how he prayed through the process in weighing his impeachment vote.
I don't like people who use their faith as justification for doing what they know is wrong. Nor do I like people who say, I pray for you, when they know that that's not so.
He really needs our prayers. He's talking about things that he knows little about, faith and prayer.
Here to react, Fox News contributor and author of the new book, Courageous, 10 Strategies for Thriving in a Hostile World. We need that advice. Pastor Robert Jeffress. Good morning to you, Pastor.
Good morning. Good to be with you guys.
So National Prayer Breakfast, usually not political, but it was yesterday.
Well, it was. And look, you know, this president, he absolutely hates phoniness. He can smell it a mile away. And the president thinks there's something inherently phony about saying that you're praying for him while you're working 24/7 to destroy him. And by the way, the Bible supports his skepticism. James 3:10 says we shouldn't be blessing and cursing people at the same time. And look, the president honored me by allowing me to attend a dinner Wednesday night that he was hosting for the organizers of this prayer breakfast. And he talked very honestly about the unrelenting attacks he and his family had been under for the last 3 years.
Right.
And somebody in the group said, well, Mr. President, the Bible says, Jesus said that we're to love our enemies.
Right.
So he turned to me. He said, Robert, what do you say about that? And I said, Mr. President, to love your enemies means to want God's best for them. But it doesn't mean you're going to be unified with them. Truth divides people. And I believe that as long as this president continues to speak truth, especially about the sanctity of life and religious liberty, the left is going to continue to hate him. They're going to continue to try to destroy him. And they're not going to be holding hands with him singing Kumbaya.
You don't have a problem with the fact that Mitt Romney said when he was trying to figure out how to vote that he prayed through the process. You don't have a problem with that.
No, I think we ought to pray about everything, and we ought to pray for wisdom. But I understand the president's skepticism. When here Mitt Romney has had vitriol against this president for years, it's obvious he's bitter that the American people rejected him 2 times for president, and President Trump was able to do something he wasn't. I can understand why the president would think the decision was based more on self-promotion and bitterness than it was prayer.
Well, you know, he is a deeply religious person, and you know, having interviewed him for years, I get where that comes from. Let's talk a little bit about the president's electorate going into November. And one of the main blocks were the evangelicals. As we look at his approval ratings right now, he's at 71%, which is very, very strong. And when you look at since October, we'll go ahead and take a look at the next poll. January 71%, December it was 67. So it's fluctuated in the upper 60s and the lower 70s. And I would imagine he would like that number. Although he'd probably like it in the 90s.
Well, that's right. And look, you know, it's interesting. Impeachment has not diminished those numbers at all. And what I've seen is this impeachment process has really mobilized his evangelical base. I saw that firsthand in Iowa last week. I was there speaking for the president at some events. And what was interesting was 4 years ago, I was in Iowa with then candidate President Trump. It was Donald Trump. And I was introducing him at evangelical events, and 4 years ago, evangelicals were interested in him, they were fascinated in him, but they really didn't know him. They just knew they didn't want Hillary Clinton as president. 4 years later, last week, the crowds were ecstatic about him. Record crowds, and it's obvious why. I mean, he's appointed 150 conservative judges to the federal bench. He's been a strong advocate for life and religious liberty. He's had unwavering support for Israel. I've told the president lately that I believe the evangelical turnout in 2020 will be greater than even the historic turnout in 2016, which was 81%. I think it's going to be a landslide for the evangelicals.
They love their God and they love their guns. They also like the Second Amendment, that he's for that and pro-guns and letting them keep their guns and protect their family. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's great to be with you all. Thank you.
Check out the pastor's new book. It's called Courageous, 10 Strategies for Thriving in a Hostile World. We could use that right now. Good job.
I know.
All right.
Thank you.